Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
And we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
You just take an issue that's important to you and do something.
There you go.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty.
This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, fighters. Welcome back to Fight for Liberty Live. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about the men and women who are out here making the world a better place through politics, activism, entrepreneurship, business, and more. And we are here live on Free Speech Media Network. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or any of the old platforms, go ahead and click the link in the description to go over and watch this on Rumble, because they pay their people better. They do everything better. So go on over Rumble or Odyssey. If you're already on one of those two platforms, go ahead, give yourself a little high five like that. We call that a homeschooler high five around here. Tonight, I am joined by an innovator and a founder of an exciting new social media platform. But first, we're going to give just a little shout out and some love to our newest sponsor, MyArkit. Save your digital my bad, guys. Save your digital legacy for generations. Don't just save your pictures where they are at risk of being censored, deleted, or lost. MyArkit gives you security and privacy at a great price while telling the whole story in your own voice and writing. Unlike a normal cloud backup to just dump all of your random pictures, MyArkit has you upload one full memory at a time. A picture or short video post with a text and or audio captions. Create a timeline that makes going back through your memories an easy and pleasant experience for you and your loved ones. If you go on over to myarkit.com, you can sign up for a 30-day free trial to see what this craze is all about. No payment info necessary. This is actually a true free trial. So that is myarkit.com, myarkit.com. If you use promo code FSM, you can help us support the channel and the network, and you can sign up for a personal account to save your life forever, or if you have an important event coming up, you can create an event account that will let attendees add photos and videos for you and other admins to go through later and curate a beautiful digital album for your upcoming wedding, convention, graduation, or shower. So again, that is myarkit.com, promo code FSM. We also, as always, are sponsored by the wonderful people over at Blood of Tyrants Wine. They have a great Merlot. Now they added a Pinot Grigio called Tears of Tyrants, and a great energy tea that's got about a cup and a half of coffee worth of caffeine in it. That's called Liquid Freedom. You can find all of that over at bloodoftyrants.wine. Again, promo code FSM will get you 10% off your first order over there. And we would really appreciate it, because they're great guys over there and they support us and we like to support them. So go on over, grab a box of wine, or a box of bottles of wine, because you know they've got like cool little 2-packs now of the red and the white. It's a great gift idea. Go on over, check that out. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight, the founder of Ponderly, a new social platform where everything is debatable, Mr. Amir Shiekh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So I always like to start off with a sort of testimonial question and how you kind of got into this mess. So what started the world of IT for you? What got you into that?
Yeah, it's not necessarily IT. It's more, the core problem which we're trying to address and solve, which is bias, misinformation, which influences all of us as individuals, society, and has real life negative consequences. And I don't think it's necessarily, one side or group that's responsible. I think everyone is. And the real problem, I think, is that most people aren't even aware. And so just over the years, I think I finally got to a level where, I've seen enough friends and family, and I see it's not even about the issue itself. It's just the lack of even knowing what you're saying is true or not, or if you verified it, or if you've seen the other side. And I said there has to be a solution. And so I think around that time was COVID, and so I said, hey, let me take a little shot at this. And so it started with 4B as an experiment, and then we kind of went through the testing, and then we rebranded now to Ponderly. And so we're at a level now that we're starting our marketing efforts and strategies and starting to onboard new users.
Nice.
And so that's kind of been the journey.
So I'm glad you mentioned 4B, because I was actually that was one of my next questions. I saw that come up while I was looking you up, and I will admit I didn't do a full amount of digging to figure out what that was. I was kind of just trying to stick to when I saw the word Ponderly. So is that kind of just an earlier iteration of the same idea?
Yeah, that was, me starting it kind of on my own, and 4B in my mind was the fourth branch. And so, there's three branches of government, is the fourth branch is the people. So it's just kind of
I
a
like
name
that.
yeah, name and kind of logo that went with it. And then kind of as I was doing testing and developing to get to where we are, Pondery was a more palatable, or easier to uh, recognize name, and there's a couple other reasons why, but so it evolved from that. The
Gotcha.
core of it is still the same, the message and the purpose is the same, but you just kind of do your testing and learn and adjust and grow from there.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I definitely I like both names, and for different reasons. I can understand why Ponderly is the more can get farther with that name. Makes sense for the rebrand. I do love the whole like fourth branch of government, just like that mindset behind it
Right.
is really neat. So tell me, I've gone through the site a little bit since Rebecca reached out to me, but tell the viewers what is Ponderly? What are you guys trying to do?
Yeah, so it's a media and social media platform. We do produce our own content, and so we have 13 categories currently, from like fashion to business to sports, and obviously politics and news. And so we don't want to be about one specific thing. We want to make sure we cover everything. But what really makes us unique is that when you go on any media, specifically platform, they all say the same thing. We're telling you the truth. We're unbiased. We're factual and all of that. And every single one of them is off the mark in different ways. And then social media has its own problems where you have influencers who, once people fall in love with them, they'll basically take anything they take as factual without fact checking them or verifying them. And sometimes people are maliciously just lying. And then most of the time, I think people are just misinformed, that they don't have the full thing, and they think that they're telling you the truth, and they're just not right. And so I think the way we solve that, or how our strategy is different on our articles, we purposely have two sides. And so I'll say something very, very simple, for example, is is the earth flat, for example? And then you have a writer that says, hey, the earth is flat, and then you have a writer that earth is not flat. They both have the same guidelines. They have to stick to kind of fact-based. They have to cite their work, and so they have to have a certain structure that they follow. And then the reader will get to see kind of both sides, kind of side by side. And then there's a neutral fact box that we provide, our editors create, and that's neutral, so that they're not convincing you on that. They're just saying, hey, this is the movement, or whatever the applicable facts are. And then there's polling on there, so people can kind of give their opinion. But essentially, the way we're different is that we present the entire story, and then we let the users or the readers kind of decide for themselves. That's all that's our goal. That's all we ask for. We're not here saying that we know the answers or we know what's right or wrong. We're more saying, hey, as long as you have all the facts, whatever your decision is, we respect that, but please have all the facts, before you decide.
Yeah.
So that's on the content side. On the social media side, we kind of, take cues from the Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, like some of the things that are working, and integrating that with the platform now. So essentially, it's a place where you can consume, information or content that you like, and then have a way to interact with it and share with your friends and family, similar to like social media. But the difference is none of the social media platforms today create their own content. It's all user content. So that's how we're different there. And then lastly, I think we're creating kind of a reward system and other ways so people can kind of engage with it. And really Ponderly is a place where you can show your real self, which is what your thoughts and beliefs and thinking is, and not really a place where you can show like, the new car you bought or, some of the material things that a lot of the social media sites show today. And the way that that we're creating kind of the back end is that if you, let's say, David, you come on the platform and you interact with a bunch of different content, based on that, it'll also match you with other like-minded kind of people, but it'll be based off of those things, like how you feel and what you think and your interests versus, your friend circle or some of the other things that are, in my opinion, are not that important.
I like that. I like that you also brought up that you aren't just on like one or two topics, that you've got like the sports and the fashion and the other things like that. Because I feel like a lot of there's a few sites and things that I've heard of, or even just like, Twitter accounts that kind of try to do this, tackling the two sides of news just as a big concept. But a lot of them just go straight to either science and or politics, and that's about it. And so many people don't really care about that stuff, but there's still an equally divisive media out there about, say, such and such football player, he got caught doing drugs. Is that good or bad? Should he be expelled from the NFL for smoking weed? Like, that's a super divisive question that's out there too. That's, I feel like, so many more people care about than, should we have vaccine mandates or something like that?
Right.
Like some super like hyper political thing. I mean, that one definitely affected a lot more people than your typical politics, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of other topics out there that are going to bring people onto the platform and then maybe expose them to different opinions on some of the other topics where they're significantly more siloed into their echo chamber. Where if you're just providing a centrist new like politics kind of a thing, nobody wants to hear the other side of a political opinion, but they might actually be interested in all the facts of like a fashion thing or a sports thing or a pop culture thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're right on many of those points. When it comes to like politics and like a lot of the decisive issues, I think people get tired, especially because if you really look at it, I mean, it's different people, it's kind of different scenarios, but a lot of the issues are the same issues. If you look at 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it's the same issues, different people. And so I think
it's
people
still just abortion and guns. That's
or immigration, or some of the things. Now I think over the last maybe like 5 or 10 years, like a lot of the trans issues have come to a forefront, and some of the other things. But I think the core of those disagreements are all kind of very similar. And if you look back, I'm a history major, and so if you go back, even hundreds or even thousands of years, humans have pretty much been having similar disputes. It's just we just didn't have Instagram and Facebook, and we weren't capturing all the dumb comments, and that we say like the young people are have lost it today. It's the same young people, it's just they didn't have anything to capture 100 years ago, all the dumb comments that people thought at the time. And technology has definitely changed the game for sure, where you can anybody can just say whatever they want. They don't think before they speak. And so I think it can give a perception that, this generation is lost, but it's just, we're just able to capture all of it. And so again, kind of going back to us, when I did kind of the research as to, how many people actually go on and read blogs, and how many people actually go and are looking for content, and, the trolls that are out there on social media and just in society in general, unfortunately, represent groups, and they don't actually represent the group, but because they're the loudest and they're the most active, it can appear as though like the whole country is, crazy, but it's just the trolls and the crazy people are just the loudest. And so and then the media picks them up. Social media is, the algorithms are on clickbait. And so they're gonna push forward somebody who's controversial before somebody who's sane and normal, because that's boring. Nobody wants to listen to a boring person.
Yep.
And so it just gives this false perception of what the country is and where society is, and that's not true. And so for me, I want to kind of attract the majority of the country and majority of the world, where they're like, okay, I don't want to cut people's head off, or I don't want to do all these crazy things, but I want to hear, and that's really what I think is a good home for those users.
I love that. I think you bring up a really good point. I was actually just kind of talking to my wife about this earlier, of like, because we were having the conversation about like how the next generation is kind of screwed in so many ways, and that just the over like technological advancements and everything, and the like my generation has a bunch of ADHD. It's going to be the entirety of the next generation is going to have all of these same symptoms. And we were kind of just talking about this whole like it just keeps getting worse generation after generation. And I was like, actually not really. This isn't a line that goes straight like down. This is, or even like an up and down. This is just a circle where we just live in a cyclical universe that just keeps doing this over and over again. And I think like one of my favorite like historical like little fun facts is one of the earliest known writings that we actually like have and can still read is basically a bad Yelp review. It's basically somebody complaining about a local merchant fucking them over. Right. And it's like that's just the most like pure human fun fact I can think of. And it's just right. Like that is who we've been since the beginning. It's just like you said, we're now getting a lot better at making all of those opinions much more permanent and much more available to many more people. And there's good things and bad things with that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to, if you had a crazy opinion, 100 years ago, you could maybe affect, your friends or, just your close group. But unless you were like a public figure or you worked in the media, and even then it would be limited to whatever that reach is. And obviously now it's not only that an individual can affect a lot of people, everybody's on there. So you just have this influx of data that before it was like, 100 years ago, you might have one station or two stations, and it might only be radio. And so, I think when you take all of those things in, it can be really, again, misleading. I just don't, you mentioned the first writings. I looked at this, this was maybe a year ago, but this excerpt, it was like 750 years old, and it was like a prominent person at the time, and they were speaking about women, and they said, and basically, obviously in their terms, they were saying how the women are not modest, they're not modestly dressed, they don't have respect, and all these things, the exact same words that we're using today for women, and they were talking about the youth. And so it's just to me it's very funny, like how we think like how back in the days people were better, or they were different. It's not, it's just the environment is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used to show their ankles. How dare they?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that was a whole big thing.
Right. Well, I mean, even just like with we talk about morality, and like people used to take over villages and rape women and kill children. And that time they didn't have weapons, so they to kill somebody you'd have to bash them over the head or something like that. So it's like no, they weren't morally better or worse, and you have to look at context, and you have to look at all of those things before we decide. And that's one of the problems that we're trying to solve, is you can't take a little bit of information and then act like everything, and then base your opinion off that little tiny little sample, and furthermore from one side only. You got to look at both sides, you got to get multiple samples, and then even then you can have a general idea, but it's to know the truth on some of these big issues, it's very challenging.
Yeah, and you brought up a few minutes ago that this kind of like race to the extreme on both sides, where the best clickbait, the most extreme, craziest, most aggressive types of people are pushed towards the forefront of their collectives, as the poster child of those collectives, and it allows us to very easily demonize either the right or the left, or the women or men, or whatever kind of collective you're trying to do. If all you're looking at is like an Andrew Tate character, it's pretty easy to hate men, and vice versa. There's plenty of terrible women out there that can be the poster child for why all women suck. You'd be like Jada Pinkett Smith or something like that. But what you're doing, I think, and especially, you mentioned like the kind of polling aspect and the kind of combination of the social media and the media, I think could at least go to the opposite, kind of a race to the center of like who can give the most actually logical, palatable opinion on their side and then the other side. And instead of it being two things that are like way over here, like MSNBC and Fox News, it'll be, you know, here and here, the actual right and left of America, because that's the kind of stuff that'll get the better ratings from people who are actually on the site like this trying to find out the actual truth. Because like you brought up like trans issues, I feel like it's impossible to actually get a word in edgewise on that in the mainstream media. You either hate all trans people and all, like, you're either like trans women are men and and you're lying and it's a mental health disorder, or you have to believe every single person that identifies as whatever and gender means nothing now and you're way over here. Anything in the middle is just not allowed. And all of science and reality is somewhere in the middle between those 2 points. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
So if these kinds of things are really exciting to me, where it actually enables people to say something that they feel to be the truth and most of society can agree with, and actually get that kind of validation for not just being some crazy edgelord.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my side, kind of my inspiration is that, you know, I'm in no position to tell somebody what's right or wrong, because I don't have all the answers myself to begin with. But I think it's, you know, the way with the platform, the way on the, you know, the reward system that we're creating and the ecosystem we're creating, it's similar to like a nice restaurant, where when you go to a nice restaurant, the rules probably aren't any different from like a McDonald's or Burger King, but people behave differently, and they behave differently because of the, you know, the environment, the you know, the decor, you know, the way that they seat people, and, you know, like the way they speak to the customers and things like that. And so I think we're using something similar there. We're trying to, and then with the reward system, we're not going to punish somebody for saying dumb things or things that are not meaningful or thought out. But what we will do is we will reward people for doing for contributing in a positive way. And so hopefully, you know, over time people will say, okay, if I make productive comments, or if I engage with the platform in a productive way and I contribute to the platform, then I will be rewarded. And the person who's just there to just troll, you know, they'll feel like, hey, I'm not getting anything out of it. And so, you know, they either will start to contribute productively, or, you know, they'll say, hey, I'm tired, I'll go to some other platform, or I'll go somewhere else. And so, you know, it's kind of a different way to look at it. I'm just not a big person on censorship, or big person on just like actively telling people what to do. I think that, you know, the results for, you know, many other platforms are not good when you do that. You know, it's just, you know, you just got to be honest. You got to tell people what you're doing, and then you got to show it.
Yeah, I love hearing that kind of stuff, because yeah, I mean, I'm a big you know, like free speech absolutist, pretty much. And I think you bring up a good point. Like, there's a lot of logical arguments for some forms of censorship and some forms of control in a position like yours, but it inherently comes with that kind of confidence and hubris of like, I actually know the truth. And I don't think any of the other founders or heads of various social media platforms actually think or thought that in when they started cracking down on various like hate speech and violence and different things. Like, I don't think Zuckerberg was actually like, I know everything and I'm gonna make it. Like, I don't think he was going in like that, but it just kind of was that slippery slope of, well, this is yucky, we can get rid of that, and this is iffy, and I don't like that, and I don't like this, and then it comes down to you enforced your opinion as truth without even meaning to. Where if you just kind of take a hands-off approach and say, hey, I don't know, you guys can figure it out, have fun, you save yourself from that headache of inevitably getting to a point where you're the buck stops at you. Are you the one allowing Nazi hate speech, or are you the one censoring and being an enemy of free speech? Your choice.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more complicated. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't know. None of us know all the things that go into it, but I would suspect with Zuckerberg specifically, or, with a lot of the founders, that they don't have as many decisions as we think they do. And, they have their hands tied, and they have, promises to certain people. And sometimes when they decide something, it might not be what they wanted to do. I mean, from what I've seen from a couple of things from Zuckerberg, I would assume he would probably prefer more of a free speech, if it was his choice. I just don't think it's necessarily his choice. I mean, you look at what's happening with Musk and a lot of people pulling out, you know, that's probably a big motivation for Zuckerberg in the past, where he's like, okay, I could do this, but the consequences, like, I might lose 20 billion, if I stick to my guns in this. Is it really worth 20 billion? Maybe not, and maybe he thinks he can, be more productive in different ways. And we all have our different logics, and, we're probably all right sometimes and wrong sometimes, but I think to me, it's more important to be understanding, right, of the other person, instead of just saying, well, if I was that person, I would do this. Well, you're not that person, you're not in that position, and you don't have all the information, so you can't really make that judgment. And furthermore, you're not even trying to. You're just making a judgment. You're not asking any questions. You're just saying, hey, this is right or wrong. But yeah, I think for me, the other thing is, like, they have, like, what is it, the Bill 240 that kind of protects them and shields them from litigation. So that's why when you see some of the like hearings, when people are able to pull some of these founders, it's because they get some certain protections from the government, and that also means then they have to answer in certain ways. And so, it's kind of like like that type of relationship, which is why, I think, I'm super into, like, having criminal laws where if you break the law or you do something maliciously, we should hold them accountable. But outside of that, we shouldn't be picking winners or losers, and we shouldn't be telling people, like, what to do, as long as they're not, doing anything illegal, unethical, immoral. And I think a lot of that, it unfortunately has happened in our in our sphere, in our category, where, government has been part of it. And a lot of people have been involved, and, we're not able to operate the way we want. And obviously we're just starting, so we're not part of any of that. But I think, it's a lot more complicated than it looks.
Yeah. And I think starting off the way that you are, with the kind of mindset of, I'm not the arbiter of truth, you don't set yourself up for the position that Musk is in right now, where that you have a bunch of people that are giving a bunch of money because they think one thing, and then, there's one post that pisses them off. You can very clearly be like, listen, I didn't promise any kind of that censorship or anything like that. You guys signed a contract with the company. You knew what you were getting yourself into. This is who we are. Now, maybe that means that Disney never advertises on Ponderly, but you don't. That might, in my opinion, that's honestly kind of for the better if you set up your financial structure from the get-go, where you're not reliant on these outside forces, or at least not these negative outside forces that are going to kind of hold you hostage the way that they're doing to Musk. You end up being able to just get support from people who agree with what you're doing from the get-go, and just grow from there. To your point, I don't think Zuckerberg would ever take the kind of leap that Musk is taking right now, because he doesn't have the same kind of fuck you money. Like, Musk was pretty much straight up like, you're going to kill my company that I just spent $33 billion on, but oh well, I'm still not gonna give in. I would rather Twitter just die. And
I think I don't necessarily think that the difference between both of them is the money is the primary reason, in my opinion. I think, Musk has a different strategy, and he's doing different things in the world. I don't think there's any Musk out there that I'm aware of. Definitely not in a public sense, but I do think it just gets very, very complicated. I mean, I think, when you're dealing with a company like Facebook, which has Meta and WhatsApp and Instagram, and then he's probably dealing with, I don't know how many employees he has, and then shareholders, and then the government, and and then for him, this is not transactional. He probably wants to be around for a long term. And, if he wants to make real change, he has to decide and pick and choose his fights. And Musk has a different strategy. Certainly the money does make a difference, but I doubt that it's, that's the reason why he's a different person. He thinks differently. But again, it's just for me, like I really, being kind of like a history major, have learned like, to reserve my judgment and, until I have all the facts. And even then, if me and you have the exact same facts, we might make different decisions. It's because we're different people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're morally or ethically wrong, depending on what it is. But it just means that, we process different and we have a different kind of upbringing. We just need to respect that. Instead of like trying to cut each other's heads off, we should say, okay, well, let me understand David. I don't agree with him, but let me see his reasoning. And maybe after that, I still don't agree, but maybe now I don't feel like cutting his head off, kind of thing. And maybe that's an extreme point, but that's really what I want is, instead of dividing people, which I feel like media and social media is doing, I want to kind of do the opposite and say, how do we find common ground, and how do we, not necessarily change our mind, but at least we respect the other side.
Yeah. No, I love that. I honestly think that mindset was the building block that I've built all of my political ideology off of. The reason I am an anarchist is because from a young age I understood that like there are so many different opinions out here and different things, and things can go so many different ways. And I don't have a history degree, but I was a history buff. Like I was a super history nerd growing up. I was one of those kids. That whole like Roman Empire meme that went around a couple months ago, like that is entirely me. I'm that person. So like, to your point, like when you look back at history, you can see how many people thought that they were right in the moment and turned out to be so categorically just clusterfuck wrong that you're like, I don't want to do that. I'm not gonna stick my neck out like that. I'm gonna let other people kind of decide for themselves how they want to live. And when you get into politics and start applying that and take it to an extreme, that makes you an anarchist who's like, yeah, no, government at all is probably bad because no one should be telling other people how to live. But it's all from that like bedrock of ideology of like, I don't know. Let's try to understand what's going on in your head a little bit more. And I think that's one of the reasons I got into this and podcasting is because I like talking to people and trying to understand their lives better.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, and this is what the breaking point for me was to jump into the platform was, I saw real life consequences with the people around me, my circle. And when you look around and I'm like, okay, it's different if you just get mad and just next morning you wake up. But when it affects people through, voting, through, where we spend our money and, all the other effects in it, then I'm like, okay, now this misinformation actually more harmful than any kind of bullets or any kind of other things that we look at like direct threats. And it's affecting everyone. And the solution is so simple. It's just give the proper actual information, give the whole story, and people will make better decisions, and there'll be less fighting and there'll be less, less of what we see. So
yeah, I think it was wild to me. I think it was probably like 2017, 2018. It was definitely after Trump got elected, like post-election and all that stuff. But like I have actual like real life friends who didn't go home for Thanksgiving because their parents voted a different way than they did and were just terrible people. Like I don't even know how I could sit in the same room with someone that voted for Trump. And or Clinton. Like I have friends. It's weird. I have multiple friends who are my age whose parents voted for Clinton and they voted for Trump, and it's like the exact opposite of what you expect. But it's wild that like 20 years ago that would just never be a thing. Like everyone voted differently and no one really cared, and it just wasn't a thing. But to your point, it's just getting so much worse, and there are like real life lasting consequences. Like actual whole families are getting torn apart. Grandparents aren't seeing their grandkids because Fox News and MSNBC have brainwashed these people into hating each other.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely been there throughout history. I mean, just in this country, like a notable example, like in McCarthy area with communism, for example, like it's always been there. I just think that the difference is now, the only difference today is technology. That is the game changer, is that with technology, everybody has a voice. It can reach everybody. You have instant access. Before, things were so slowly moving, and and not only was it slow moving, but it would be very difficult for something to catch on. You would when you don't have technology, it's word of mouth, and it's just very difficult. And so that's really what the game changer is. But the core of it, the problems, the fighting, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's always been there in various forms.
Yeah. I feel like to me one of the biggest differences between like what they're doing now versus like McCarthy era stuff, or some of the other iterations that were similar, is it used to be like the to put it in like super conspiracy theorist terms, just to simplify it, like it used to be like the establishment, the cathedral, whatever, versus demonizing these like small little groups. Like there wasn't an active communist party in the United States that was getting 45% of the popular vote when McCarthyism was happening. It wasn't it wasn't split the country down the middle and pit them against each other. It was very much like, let's try to keep them united and just make sure that they're scared enough of these tiny little groups out here. Where now they've figured out how to actually split that group in half and just make them afraid of each other, which is...
Yeah. I think that goes back to technology, because an average American in the 50s, like, there's nothing they could do, like, in the debate. Like, they can have their opinion, but there's nowhere in social they can interact. There's no protest. Like, there's nothing to organize or do all that. And that's where I kind of focus on the technology, is that if we had Instagram and TikTok and all of that in the 50s, I can promise you we would have had similar issues and the society would be different. It's just there was nothing to first of all light that fire, and the fires could be squashed really easily by the government or by other, community leaders. The population was significantly less in the 50s than it is today. The world wasn't connected. There's a lot of reasons. People had to actually, they had to work laborious jobs and long, like it was just a very different thing. And so again, it just goes back to, it's the technology. I mean, that's really what the main difference is. And it is a game changer. It's not a small difference. It's a very, very big difference. And I think we're going to go through this. We are going through this damage with the suicide rates and depression and all the other consequences in society. We're going to go through that, and there's going to be, as long as we don't artificially inflate it, there's going to be equilibrium where it will come back down and people will realize it over time. But that we don't know if that's going to be 12 months from now, it's going to be 12 years from now, or what that is. But it's going to happen where things are going to come back to equilibrium, because this technology thing, just when you look at it on a macro level, it's an immediate, it's just a spike. Technology just came in out of nowhere. We didn't have it for thousands of years, and all of a sudden, we have this. We have no idea, even biologically, for us to be tied in, our eyes, or messing with our sleep and all the other effects that we have that's outside of just disagreements. It's a big difference.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the working laborious jobs, and I think that's a huge part of the difference. I was actually another part of the same conversation with my wife earlier today. I was talking about that, like, I genuinely think that if life was harder, people would be happier. Like the easier life has gotten somehow actually made us sadder and less happy with what we are doing. And I think a lot of it just comes down to time and ability to be sad. Like our great grandparents never had the opportunity to have a depression day where they spent all day in bed.
Right.
Like everyone my age has done that at least once,
Right.
I did it a couple days ago. But our great grandparents just that was never it wasn't even a concept. Like the idea of like, oh, I just want to stay in bed, too fucking bad, gotta get up. Like that's as long as that thought lasted for them. They just didn't have the ability to just sit around and think about how much they hate other people or how much they hate themselves or say all of the dumb shit. Like, to your point, I think if we had just the social media but not any of the other technology that has actually made our lives significantly easier, I think like it would be kind of like an elitist thing. Like in the 30s, most people wouldn't have time to really have an active Twitter account at all.
Right.
Which is kind of still to this day, like why the influencers are who they are, is because it's the people that have made it big enough to just do it full time. And they're the ones that get the attention. But
yeah, I mean, I think kind of going back to, I know you mentioned the Roman Empire and all the major empires that have risen and fallen. It's kind of basically, you kind of nailed it with that, where once you become successful and the people and the core of the civilization does not have motivation, right? they've accomplished, they've taken over, they have no threats, their bellies are full, however analogy you want to use. And you get a generation after that and the next generation, and they don't have the same work ethic or drive or motivations, then that's when big empires slowly fall. And we always focus on, well, it was the resources, or it was plague, or no, it wasn't. It was just a drive, and that's all it is. And so that's where we are. It's a cyclical thing where we are today, where as much as you like to see on social media, there's people are dying of poverty, or we don't have this or medicine, or I mean, we have the most resources, best medicine, best knowledge of any time in human history. We have, this country specifically is the best country that ever existed on any objective measure. But if you looked at social media, you wouldn't feel that way. You would feel like, hey, we're just, I mean, without repeating some of, you probably already know some of the things you hear out there. And so that's a consequence of, like you said, or kind of alluding to what you're saying, is that people who haven't worked, who haven't sacrificed, for the country, or even within their communities, and they have this tool where they can let out their inner feelings without having to earn it. And that's really what you get. And the social media companies don't help, because they're promoting that clickbait and the ridiculous stuff out there as representative of the entire country and or entire society. And media is doing the same thing. They want to make money and get more clicks and more people on there, so they're going to do the same thing as well. And all the sane people, or the reasonable people, or the people who represent majority people, are kind of left in the nobody sees them kind of column. So
yeah, no, 100%. It's crazy. I'll get into arguments with, I think my sister's probably the worst offender of this, because she's probably the most, like, quote unquote blue pilled person that I talk to on a regular basis. But we'll start talking about an issue, and like, she knows who I am and what I believe, and like, I'm not a Republican. I've never been a Republican. I never liked Trump. I've never voted for anyone with an R next to their name in my life. Like, right. But she will have an argument with me. Well, she will continue to put those like ridiculous worst of the worst people that we're talking about, their words into my mouth to try to make me defend them, because that's all she knows how to do, is argue my ridiculous thing versus your ridiculous thing, and nothing in the middle. Or most of the time I'm not even in the middle. I'm like way over here. Like, you guys are both so dumb. And it's just impossible to have an actual discourse, because she is just so dead set on bitching about that one person on Twitter who got screenshotted and shared all over the place, and he had this terrible take. And to go back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, when I see that kind of stuff, not only do I just kind of write it off as clickbait, but it's also like, maybe they have a reason to believe that. There's at least that millisecond of empathy for both sides. Is like I'll listen to Rachel Maddow sometimes and be like, she's kind of smart sometimes. She's got some decent takes. I understand where she's coming from on some things, and she's been brainwashed to think most of the other dumb things that she says. Like, makes sense.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, you bring up a very good point, and to me, I think it's similar to, like, when we see shadows when we're out in nature, and we automatically make figures out of it, or we think we see something. And so it's a biological protection that we have over time. And I think that in my opinion, that translates to social issues or mental issues. When we see somebody right away, and I'm sure you did it with me, like, am I more conservative? Am I more liberal? Like, am I offended by this, or am I not? And that's, human interaction. It's a survival instinct, right? And we want to survive, and we want to thrive and do well. And so we have that. The problem is, I think we don't do a very good job of controlling it. And the social media and media, again, not only does a bad job, but they, in my opinion, intentionally mislead and intentionally, pit people together for their own profit, or, whatever, their own benefit. And the consequences in society, we're feeding off that biological thing that, hey, survival, it's my people are dying, or my this, or, and, statistically, by any measure, we live in the safest, healthiest, most advanced civilization in the world. But you wouldn't know that, because everybody thinks like the world is ending. It's not. So I do think it's that survival instinct, and the media and social media by design is feeding off of that. And that's, again, kind of going back to us, is the core of it is like we want to do the opposite, and we want to feed off of that, off the, not the necessarily the centrist, but that 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 human side, the intelligent side. The reason why we are, dominating the world and not animals is because we have this great mind, and we want to use it. We don't want to go off our biological, hey, there's some in the shadows. We want to go out, let me think about this. And really highlight that kind of on the platform. But you bring up a really good point, I think, with that, that assumptions that people make.
Yeah.
We just, assumptions, if I would say anything, like, we're free speech, but I don't like assumptions. I don't want to have assumptions on the platform. You can come in with it, but you want to be open-minded when you come.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I mean, if I was part of the like old school corporate media, it'd be pretty easy to, you're Pacific Standard Time and Brown. You're obviously on the left. Like, just those two things, that's easy.
Yeah. But I mean, surprisingly, a lot of people don't, and I'm guilty. I'm not sitting here saying that I don't do it, but I'm sure I'm guilty of it. When we look, we assume, because it's a survival instinct and we want to do the best we can. And we don't have the information. We don't have the time to come in and do a whole investigation before we talk to a random person, especially not on the street or even a family member. And so you have to fill in those gaps, right? And so you fill in those gaps with statistics, and you say, well, statistically, if this person has, colored hair, they're probably more left. Or statistically, if this person wears a cross, then they're probably conservative. Or, whatever that is, we take these bits of information and we fill in the gaps, and we say, okay, well, David is this. I know he's this, and I don't care what he says, but this is what he is. And that's what people do when they read. That's what they do on social media. And again, we want to kind of, work to work against that, and show people there is an alternative to that. And that alternative is not only better for you, but it's better for society.
Yeah, because by any like basic metric that like actual data points can back up, I should be a Trump Republican. Like I'm a middle class white, like rural raised, fundamental Christian raised. Like I'm not a hard Christian anymore, but like, I should have turned out like that, but I didn't somehow.
Right.
So you definitely have to kind of take a step back, and at least I feel like most people will tell you who they are if you just kind of let them. And
maybe. Yeah.
They might lie to you and try to tell you something that they're not, but then you get to, then it's a bullshit radar, not an assumptions radar. It's not a trying to put somebody into a box. It's a, do I actually believe what they're telling me, which is a completely different mindset to be in. But you just let them talk, especially if we're trying to identify like bad people. Like anti-Semites are super quick to tell you that they hate the Jews. Just give them like 3 or 4 minutes and it will come up. They will start talking about the weather or something else. You don't have to like try to like pinpoint, oh, this guy's a Nazi. Nazis are happy to tell you they're Nazis.
Right. But you know what I think the most lying in general is people lying to themselves. I think, and that's why I said maybe, is that people are saying things they might even believe what they're saying, but deep down inside they're lying to themselves, and then in return they're obviously lying to you or whoever they're speaking with. And I think that's where, again, you can't solve the problem, you can't tell somebody they're lying, but I think if you expose them over time, somebody can realize, hey, maybe this isn't correct, or maybe I'm wrong on this issue. But I can promise you this: if you yell at that person, if you troll that person, if you make fun of that person, even if you have the facts, they will not change their mind. There's nobody that's going to spit facts at somebody and make fun of them, and then they're going to all of a sudden, you know what, you were right, I was wrong. Even if they are right, they're now going to say, double down, and they're going to find a way to say, well, attack their character or whatever it is. And so that's where, again, coming back to us, like, we're not, the facts, obviously we're fact-based, so that's important. That's really not what the issue is in society. It's not a matter of like who has better facts or who has the facts. It's the matter of that connection, and that communication is lacking because we're not actually free-flowing. There's not a free flow of those facts, and it's about assumptions and associations and groups and all these other things, clickbait, that are really harming that that free flow of interaction. And so it's really sad. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I think there's a lot more people like you than you think. Not necessarily like exactly what you believe, but what I mean is they might identify to the world or their family and friends a certain way, or be perceived in a certain way, but they really don't. And maybe because they want to respect their family, or they don't want to be the outsider, or whatever the reason is, they want to fit in, or it's not that important for them to express what they view. I think there's a lot more people like you than you think.
Yeah. That's honestly, that's one of the most encouraging things about working in politics over the last 5 years, has been kind of seeing that firsthand. And the best thing I've ever done to kind of break out of that social media enforced, like, everyone is crazy, the world is ending thing, is just knocking on 300 random strangers' doors a day for multiple years. Like, I used to do campaign door knocking for almost 2.5 years straight, and just talking to, and a lot of times I was working in like primaries, or like doing get out the vote for a general election, so I'm still talking to very, like, all the way on one side or the other people. But even I have voted Republican in every election since 1974 type people are less crazy than any of the talking heads on the Republican side. And just getting to talk to them and understanding what they care about and what they believe, by far the most, like, encouraging thing I've ever done. Not always, because some people are really dumb and brainwashed, and some days are really discouraging. But it's definitely a huge.
Yeah, I mean there are. I mean, I don't like to use that word dumb, but there are people that are smarter than others, maybe I can say. But I do think, and I just look at myself. So there's different issues that I've switched on in my life that I believe. And when I look back, it's obviously I have the same brain, so I didn't all of a sudden become a lot smarter. I just think I just didn't put enough attention. I didn't do enough research. I just didn't, put enough thought into it. And maybe I was influenced by my surroundings, the people I was with, or the community I was in, and I just didn't put enough my own energy, and I just went along with the flow. So that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm dumb. It just means that I just didn't have put enough into it. And I think a lot of people are that way, where they just go with the flow. And if they're, if you grow up in a liberal environment with liberal family and friends, guess what you're probably going to be? It's statistically, we know what that is. That doesn't mean that that you're intelligent or not. It's just you just might be busy with school or work, or you got other issues, and you're just like, this is not important. So if somebody asks me a question, I'm just going to default to this. And I think there's a lot of that as well, which is why it's even more important to just expose people and get them to think, and then whatever they decide, they decide. But I just don't see that happening today.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point, and it actually kind of is a great lead into my next question, which kind of like a devil's advocate-y question. Do you think that people actually want to put in the work of reading the other side's opinion and coming to an actual conclusion on a platform like yours, or are they really just comfortable with what they've got now in their echo chamber and their proxy trust that they've already kind of established in their various figureheads?
Yeah, well, good question. I mean, I think people, just by human nature, want to be in a place where they're comfortable, where they feel a belonging and they feel wanted. And that's just human. That's why we have families. I mean, we're just biologically, that's what we want. And so I think when people are in bubbles, for example, on social media, and let me take a issue that's maybe I don't know, let's say immigration, and they believe that immigration is really important, we should have secure borders, or whatever the case may be. If they believe that, they search a couple of things, they like a couple of posts, guess what the content they're going to get served is going to be all supporting that, and they're not aware of it. They're just like, hey, look at, there's this going on with illegal aliens, and there's this going on, and Biden this and all of that. They're just going to get all that, and that stuff might even be all accurate, but they're not going to get served the other perspective or the other side of it. And so I think they believe that once they believe something, they're going to do subconsciously and consciously everything to feel belonging and wanted and comfortable with their position. So they justify, I believe this, and all of these things support my case. And so I think what we're trying to do is to say, you can still believe that. We're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to say you're an idiot or you're wrong or you're immoral, but we're going to say, hey, how about you just listen to the other side, and we're going to present it in a fact-based way, in a non-threatening way, and you can just view it. And then there's people here that are on here that aren't going to cut your head off, and they're going to maybe communicate with you, and you communicate back and forth. And who knows, maybe you can convince somebody that you're right, or maybe you can listen to somebody on the other side. And I think if you can come to a place and nobody agrees with you, but they're not cutting your head off, and they're welcoming you, and they're saying, hey, David, we'd love to hear what you say. We don't agree with you, but we'd love to hear what you say, and vice versa. And there's that exchange. You can have that. You can have that, right? That's what we're trying to create. The problem is today there's not that. People are divided and they don't know it. And then the interactions that mostly that I see, they're hostile. They're very hostile interactions. And so definitely in those types of environments, you're not going to have people that want to listen to the other side, because if there's any interaction, it's hostile, and they're like, why would I want that? Nobody wants that stress or whatever. But if you can come in and create that environment, I think people will be open to interacting, or at minimum, just listen and just get exposed to it. And if you trust the source and you trust it's fact checked, and you understand the strategy of the platform, that hey, there is no bias because they're clearly showing both sides, I think people over time will be open to it.
Yeah, I think you brought up immigration, and I kind of like triggered a train of thought that one of the things that bugs me the most about like old school corporate media and like mainstream media is when both sides are lying in the same way, but seemingly for different reasons. So like immigration, for example, the actual truth is that Biden is under Biden, there's still almost the exact same number of people getting locked up at the border as there was under Trump. But both sides are ignoring that to make Biden look either better or worse to each side. And I think it has an effect of, when both sides agree on a fact, it kind of reinforces it. Even if you're a constant MSNBC watcher, all you watch is MSNBC and CNN, if you hear Fox News agreeing with you, then you're like, oh, so this is definitely true. Biden's definitely like actually opening up the borders and being great, and we got what we wanted. When it's fear mongering to one side and like campaigning basically to the other side, and then vice versa. You have the same kind of shit in the other direction where Trump was accused of being some crazy Second Amendment nut that was gonna just like let guns be everywhere, and in reality he passed more gun control than Obama did. But both sides are saying the same lie, so everyone just believes it.
Yeah, I think with this going on this journey, creating this platform, one thing I've learned when it comes to the discourse in society and interacting is that truth is the least important important thing, like on every side. Like we talk about it and we say that word, we throw it around, but truth is not the heart of the issue. I think especially today, like a lot of it is this virtue signaling, the morality and ethics and character and all these things that have nothing to do with the issue, that are brought up. And it's like, okay, well, Republicans are all this, or Democrats are all this, or whatever the case is. It's just where everybody groups everybody together, and that's really what the core of the disagreement is. It's really nothing about the actual truth or the facts, like you just mentioned. I didn't look at the specific facts you quoted, but it's not important for people. Like they say it is, and they're gonna cite. They might cite some article that's not even verified, and then they'll be ignorant, and they're like, well, I saw it in an article, so it has to be true, or whatever the case is. And so that kind of again goes back to like, we need to understand what's the core of the disagreement. And it's not about the facts, because I can promise you, whether it's immigration, whether it's abortion, whatever the disagreement is, let's say, Ukraine, or if it's, the Israel, Palestine issue, all of that, majority of the people don't know any of the facts, or they know very little facts, but they're willing to, swear on their mom or whatever it is, but they, if I ask them basic questions, they would not know. Yeah. And so it just kind of highlights and kind of cements the fact that it's not about the facts. It really isn't. And that's where, again, we got to kind of attack, like, what is the core of the problem? And it's the communication and the breakdown in communication, and not understanding that it's a breakdown of the communication. And if we can fix that important kind of mediator transitional communication, like the facts and all things, that'll come out, that'll come through, because we all have the same. You can't change the facts. Facts are facts. And so I think we got to focus more on that versus who has the right facts or not.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's why I've stayed out of, for the most part, both of those conversations, but especially Israel-Palestine. I think I've tweeted like maybe 4 things about that entire conflict. One of them was today. I quote tweeted an IDF tweet because it was just ridiculous. But like I have stayed completely out of that conversation because I cannot trust any source of information on that. Even the people that I would normally trust wholeheartedly for any other previous conflict, people like antiwar.com, who are fantastic on everything, have definitely taken a slightly pro-Palestine stance on this and are a little bit skewed. And some of not the actual publication itself, but some of the people and their tweets and stuff, they're like when Israel supposedly bombed the hospital and with 500 casualties or something, and then that came out to be just like not a thing. But almost everyone that I trust, love, and respect tweeted that out as, oh my God, look at how terrible Israel is. And when that happened, that solidified my stance of like, I am going to shut the fuck up about this for the whole thing. Cause I don't know. Cause I almost tweeted that. I was like, this is it. This is the thing that proves like one side is worse than the other. But I'm just going to hold off a day and see if this gets verified. And then I'll actually speak out, because this is just ridiculous. But then it wasn't true, and I'm glad I held off a day, because I'm thankfully not one of the people, but almost everyone I know was look at Israel, they're terrible.
Well, there's not very many things that are 100% in the world, but people lying and misleading is 100%. And so knowing that, you just can't. And again, it kind of goes back to like, it doesn't matter how much experience somebody has, how emotionless they are, how much research they've done, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, people are going to twist. And, even if it's a matter of like, if you're reporting on something, you might, report a little bit more on something, a little less on something. But that kind of skewing and not being balanced, the consequences, the reader might be misled. And, it's happening everywhere. And again, the saddest part is that people don't even know. And it's just like, they're just consuming, well, I trust this person, they might not even know they're doing it. But you're right. I mean, it's just these conflicts, we act like we understand. There's, millions of people around the world that are involved, whether monetarily or sending supplies or behind the scenes phone calls and all of that. I mean, if me and you had a dispute right now privately, and we try to explain it, it might take us a week to explain it to a jury, what happened, and we're just 2 people. And this involves like millions of people, and we don't even have all the facts, and then people, opine on it as if like, they know, as a matter of fact, what happened or what didn't happen. That kind of boggles my mind when people speak as if they know, and you're not even there, and you're speaking out. The people there don't even know fully, the whole story. So again, it just goes back to like, it's not about the facts. It's that's secondary. We need to get to the communication, or the lack thereof, the breakdown and the misinformation and the bias and all that stuff. If we attack that, everything else will work itself out. Yeah.
And I mean, to your point of like just the inevitability of kind of skewing things, I feel like, a little mask off moment. I feel like I almost intentionally skew reality on this show and with free speech media, because I specifically try to interview people that are doing good stuff, and I try to skew the conversation towards what they're actually doing. I've had plenty of people on the show that I could have had an entire 2.5-hour podcast about just drama and their arguments with other people and the clusterfuck that is like either their state libertarian party or whatever is going on. But I don't, because I don't want my viewership to know all of that stuff. I want them to be excited by the people who are doing good things and the good things that they're doing. So, I could like, I could be trying to do the clickbaity stuff and capitalize on the drama, but I actively try not to. And I think, to your point, that is still skewing the facts a little bit towards my audience thinking that the liberty movement as a whole is maybe a little bit better than it actually is. And I'm okay with that. That's kind of on purpose, and I'm going to keep doing it. So it's inevitable. Even if you're a good actor, you're going to focus on some things more than others, and kind of skew your reporting at least a little bit, even if you're not trying to do something bad with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the majority of it, actually, is, I don't think people are maliciously, misleading or anything. I think actually it's contrary. I think most people are doing it for what they believe is good, right? And that's the same thing, we talk about immigration, or we talk about, the Ukraine, and, it's everybody has good intention. We just have a different way or, different thought of what that intention is. But I think for the most part, most people they're good. People are generally good, with the exception of some, extreme people on the outside. And so that's where, it's not about, if you're on the Israeli side or Palestinian side, it's either you're good or you're evil, or, there's, unfortunately, there's good people on both sides. There's bad people on both sides. There's mistakes that are made on both sides. There, the evil people on both sides. But you can't say, one side is good and one side is evil. And I'm not talking about Israel, Palestine specific. I'm saying any conflict, anytime you have large numbers of people, it's not all people are good and all people are bad. Maybe some sides are more right than others, but they might only be right on certain issues, and other issues are not. And so far, it's a really complex issue. And when we try to dumb it down and try to understand an issue and lie to ourselves, really, and say, no, I know these people are bad. Like 0.0000001% of the data available to make that call, and you're speaking as a matter of fact based on that, almost nothing information. And that's really, again, where things get harmful in individuals and society.
Yeah. I think the only time that you can really truly know that someone is the only time that I actually will listen to someone who's saying like, no, this is a bad human, is if they were actually friends with them for a long period of time. Like, if you actually know them as a person and then have watched how they live life and decided that's not the kind of person that you want to be friends with anymore because of like verifiable, like you actually know them, all right, I'll listen to you. Any other case, I don't like you know nothing about what's going on in their head. You have no idea who they are as a person, so I don't really care about your opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we took meticulous efforts, like the structure and design, to take out the human part. Meaning, there's very few points where a human decides, or is making any decisions as far as when it comes to being objective or neutral. And when you take that out, you just, it doesn't matter those people, or let's say myself, I consider myself, neutral and objective. But I'm a human. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I'm perfectly in straight. And even if my intention is that, there might be, the tone of my voice. It might be, certain things I'm accentuating, whatever it is, and I'm not even aware of it. But the point is, the only way to avoid it is to not put me in a position where I'm going to make a call or I'm responsible for something that's going to influence other people. And that's really what it comes down to, is that, we just can't. It's not about, I trust myself. It's not about you trust me. It's about I should not be in that position where I'm making those calls when we're affecting millions or billions of people, and they're influencing them in that way. And so that's really what again makes us different, is that we're using a kind of different strategy there versus saying trust me. I'm a good person. You need to listen what Amir says, and I have better experience than others. No, I don't, and no, I'm not better than anybody else. But I think the strategy is completely different, where you don't have to trust me because it's not about me. So
I love that. I like when companies and especially like platforms like that kind of have that thought process ahead of time. It's something that like I'm a big fan of Odyssey. It's a video streaming platform. And especially like I do a lot of work with Rumble as well, but as far as the structure goes, they're so drastically different, and Odyssey is way better because they're built on an open source platform with very little actual control of what's going on. So you could completely legally create Odyssey 2.0 with almost all of the same everything, all of the code's already there, and they can't delete your videos off of the blockchain. They can just kind of unlink them from Odyssey. So they're always there. You can just boom, your channel's back up. And I mean, it takes some tech work, but you can very easily reignite your channel if they started going crazy like YouTube and just yeeting a whole bunch of people. There would very quickly be an Odyssey 2.0 that eats them alive and has everyone's content still there, and completely negates the problem that YouTube is going through. And it's a terrible business model as far as financial stability or whatever, because they could very easily just get eaten by a brand new thing that's just coming up off of all of their R&D. But they're okay with that, because if we ever get tyrannical, take us out. Like that's kind of how they built it. It's very I don't know, founding fathers esque of we're gonna put in these couple of safeguards that if we go shitty, kill us. That's how this should work.
Right.
It's
no, I mean, all of those things again, I think it's, the intention is there. I mean, even people who are, and I understand being an anarchist, forget about government control. You're obviously not, there shouldn't be government, or there shouldn't be any control at all. But I think people who are super for hey, government should be involved in this, they should be involved in that, they should tell whatever. I don't think that those people, again, in their mind, they're like, I want that because it's better, right? Government can control better and all of those things. And, obviously, we can find, we can talk till forever on reasons why that's not good, and why it's not good to give power to anybody, regardless if it's government or if it's a good person or a moral person or whatever it is. We found history repeats itself, that it's always going to be bad, whether it's directly maliciously or indirectly or as a consequence to. But again, going back to it, it's not the people. I don't think it makes somebody bad. It's just everybody they think that that's a better way. And logically, it does make sense. If government is elected and they're supposed to be neutral, and they're supposed to be for the people, if they tell us hey, we should mask up, for example, we should take the COVID vaccine, then they probably did their research, and they have an incentive too, that the people are healthy and all of that. And so there's justification. But I think that's where, again, we got to limit the human input as much as possible when it comes to these types of decisions. And that produces the best outcome. And it's fairest for most people, and it's closest to the truth. Yeah, at the end of the day, when you do that, versus David's truth or Amir's truth or whoever's in power's truth, like that, that's their truth. So
no, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, to your point, I just completely agree that most statists are good people. They're just have been lied to their entire lives that government does things well, because they went to government schools, and then a bunch of them got government jobs, and how are you expecting these people to all of a sudden just magically wake up to the fact that government actually isn't good when they've rewritten the entirety of their history textbooks that they've learned? Unless you're a real history buff that goes outside of the curriculum to go and read, I was a weird kid. I read Mussolini's autobiography as a kid, and got some weird outside perspectives that maybe I didn't need as a 12-year-old. But you get to see those other perspectives, but most people don't. Most people are more worried about math or science or something else. And
I mean, and I think I said it earlier at one point, but when you start to ask people who are very passionate about something, they start to break down. Most people, they don't, and that's when I kind of, to me, that's frustrating. It's okay, whatever you believe, I respect that, but if you can't tell me, basic things, or you can tell me you didn't do any research, or you didn't do your your due diligence, then it's hard to respect an opinion when you just regurgitating what your environment tells you, or what you heard on the news, or what you saw on a social post. It becomes challenging for me to respect that, opinion. If you've done all the research and you, in my opinion, have a wrong view, I still respect that, because that's your interpretation of it. But I think that a lot of that digging past the surface is not really present today, and it's just I trust the influencer, I trust the media, I trust this person. Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't trust any of those people, and you got to do your own. And that's where we kind of present everything, and you decide for yourself after you see the full story.
I like it. One last question for you. What has been the hardest or most challenging part of getting this off the ground?
Yeah, I think it's been the overall journey. It's been very challenging because we're not copying anybody. And so, when you're trailblazing in the concept and what we're doing, it's challenging. You can't really look to, X competitor and say, okay, well, this worked for them, this doesn't work for them. You're kind of just, making things up on the fly, and then you're getting feedback. And then a lot of the friends and family that you have, unfortunately, again, it goes back to intention. They're just always telling you, good job, that's great, I love it. And they're just not telling because they don't want to hurt your feelings, but that they're not doing you kind of like a favor. So it's really difficult to kind of get, good feedback. And then, just navigating that is just a really challenging, sometimes, how would you say, like a lonely experience, in a way. I mean, there's people, we have people here, we have people on the team, but I think just as a group, it becomes lonely sometimes. There's nobody else doing it, and nobody understands you, and nobody understands the struggles, and all of that. So I think, and then staying true to your vision and to your principles about staying neutral, and making sure we offer both sides. And sometimes a lot of our editors and writers, and I respect them so much, they bite their lip because they're editing an article, and they have to edit both sides, and sometimes it's an issue that's very passionate to them, and they're like, oh, I really hate that other person, but you got to treat them exactly the same as you do yours, and you can't edit out anything that you don't like, or you have to make sure that you stay neutral in those things. I think that's challenging for a lot of people, once you start to get nitty-gritty into it. And so yeah, it's just the overall journey and doing something new, and then being in the tech field where it's so saturated with so much competition, so many people, although they're not doing exactly what we're doing, there's millions of apps out there, and everybody's fighting for something. And so it's just kind of getting that critical mass, and then once we get that, we kind of grow another layer, and I think once we get to that level, things will get, we'll have different set of problems, but I think at least getting off the ground won't be one of those issues.
Yeah.
On the flip side, all that being said, maybe it's equivalent to maybe having a kid, where it's like, you got to stay up late, you got to deal with all these things, but in the end, it's worth it. And I think that, looking back, it's definitely been a learning experience. All the people I've continued to interact with, have interacted with, it's just, in that sense, it's priceless.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak enough for the like entrepreneurship activism. Like it is one of the most grueling things that you'll ever do, but it is the most rewarding thing. Like it's been something that I've talked about a lot, both on the show and just to people and friends, is just, if you have an idea, start a company, go do a thing. Like that is the best thing that you can do, is try to start a thing, become financially independent based off of just doing something that you care about, and moving forward in life that way. Get out of the 9 to 5 punching a clock, the working 40 hours a week towards something you don't care about, and then trying to fit the stuff you care about on top of that. Like that's the best thing you can do for yourself, your family, for everybody, is just get out of that, and then you can worry about what it is you're actually trying to do. But like, yeah,
I think it's yeah, I think it's important, and in certain stages of life, I think if I was younger, you're just not ready, and the way your lifestyle is, obligations, all that. So there's a time and a place for that. But I think and it's not necessarily for everyone. There's a lot of there's a lot of stress that comes with it. There's a lot of other things that come with it, and so you have to kind of weigh the whole thing. I would say if you're ready and you're in a position you can do it, I would highly recommend doing it, because it's important to me, at least as a person. I'm not going to look back and say, look at it in an objective way or measure in a money way, or some of those things. I'm going to look at it like, hey, I wanted to do something, I wanted to make a difference, and I took that leap, right? And so to me, like that's how I look at it at this stage in my life, that it's important that, and I try to line something up where it was a good kind of business platform decision, but it also did some good in the world, in my opinion, good in the world, which is fighting this, misinformation bias problem. And so to me, it's fulfilling and checks off all of those boxes.
Hell yeah, I love that. I'll agree with that, like, big asterisk of, like, if you're ready to what I was saying. Like, I started my first company when I was 21, and I had a daily decision of, do you want to work or do you want to watch Netflix and smoke?
Right.
And I got to make that decision as a 21-year-old kid, making just enough money to where I could actually still keep buying the weed and barely working. And I stretched that out for a few months of just not doing anything. I'm an entrepreneur. I can do whatever I want. I can go out drinking on Tuesday night. And so, yeah, there's definitely an element of, get yourself ready.
Yeah, it's the right place and right time.
Financially.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And, I mean, even if I look at myself, like there's different times I was not ready, and for a variety of reasons. And so you have to, but on the flip side, to your point, I think initial is that if you wait too long, you'll be waiting forever. And so, you at some point you have to be forceful. You can't just say your mentality can't be, I'm going to wait for the perfect time, because the perfect time will not come. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a balance between, I'm not ready at all. That's cool. Don't do it. And okay, I'm ready, but I'm going to wait for the perfect time. If you're ready, the perfect time is now. Because you're just, life will hit you and you'll never have that perfect time. So.
Amen. Couldn't agree more. And they're not technically a sponsor of this show, but I'm going to do this little ad spot anyway, because if you are trying to start a company, go on over to crafton.us/start, because they will help you get off the ground for one flat fee from one great place. And it's a great organization to get your company off the ground with. So you get like registered agent, the filing fees, logo, website, and the whole nine for like all one flat fee. Crafton.us/start. Go check it out. That was just way too perfect to not throw them in there real quick. Before I let you go, tell people how to find you, how to find Ponderly, how to get the app, and why they should.
Yeah, for sure. So we are on the App Store and the Google Play Store. You just type in Ponderly. So that's literally it. We do have a website as well, ponderly.com. However, that's not where we want our user experience. That's just kind of more informational, to have kind of the full immersive and social media experience. And we really want to get people to start engaging and using, and we're producing the content. Is just Ponderly, Ponderly. And would love the support as we grow and make a difference, not only in kind of the tech and the app, but in society. So we appreciate the support.
Hell yeah. Guys, definitely go follow their Twitter, check out the app. I'm pretty excited about this. This is really cool. I think that you guys are attacking a really big problem that we've obviously beaten throughout this entire episode, so I don't need to reiterate that. But definitely check out what they're doing. Don't forget to like and share this video everywhere so everyone else that you know and love can find out about this awesome app and these great people who are trying to solve this problem in the world. And then come on back here next week. We've just got the regular show on Wednesday. Tyler Harris, who just recently joined the Lars Mapstead for President campaign. So we're going to be talking about that, as well as his time as executive director of the LP and a couple of other things. So definitely come on back for that. It'll be a great time. Amir, thank you so much for coming on. This was absolutely awesome. I'm so excited about what you guys are doing now.
Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I had a really great time, and we appreciate the support, and I love what you're doing as well.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Guys, definitely, like I said, click the like button, share this around, come on back next week. But until then, keep up the fight.